Hey guys, it's FilterSC here, and I'm back for episode number 4 of my Heart of the Sworn Bronze to Master series for Terran. Now, in the game in the background that you're going to see, it kind of features the idea of planning and not letting devastating attacks kind of mess up your plan and your ideal goal for this game. So in this particular game, what I want to do is I want to go for a fast Widow Mine drop, because that's very good against certain things like an Oracle play, and stuff like that, because that just leaves the Protoss without detection at home. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's not a good idea because oracles can detect. And the answer to that is, yes, they can, but it costs 100 energy, which means they can't attack you. So if he scouts me and decides to pull his oracle back to defend against the Widow Mines, I'm going to take a lot less damage in terms of my own economy. Then my opponent is going to take a little bit less damage, but he's then opened with Stargate tech that is essentially useless. So for me, that's a pretty big win. Now, in this game, what happens is his Oracle ends up flying to the back of my base and taking out basically all of my SPs in my main mineral line because I didn't have a turret up. The reason I didn't have a turret up is I wasn't all that worried about an Oracle play because I didn't think my opponent would go for it based on the information that I scouted. It turns out that I was wrong, and he did go for an Oracle play, and it hurt my economy a lot more than it probably should have. But at the same time, I managed to execute my Widow Mine drop fairly effectively, denying mining at his expansion for a very, very long time until he was able to get observers up in order to detect the Widow Mines and clear them out so that he could actually mine off his base, which is a pretty big deal. I also ended up getting about 12 probe kills out of the deal. My opponent got 22 SCV kills, I believe. But from there, all I do is I get up to my 5 barracks, and I get up to my 2 medevacs, and I make my plans for an attack. Now, the big thing about this is because my opponent went for oracles, his overall tech is way behind where it should be. Now, he makes kind of a bad decision, and he chooses to continue going with Stargate tech, with Void Rays and stuff like that, which are not very effective against the army I have. Turns out it delays his Colossus, which probably would have helped prevent a lot of the damage that I ended up doing to him initially. But at the same time, I am on 1-1 and my opponent's on 0-0 for upgrades, so I end up having a huge advantage in that regard. And I just wanted to kind of put this in the background to show you that as long as you stick to your game plan, you're going to be in really good shape. Which leads into what this episode is all about. This episode is all about having a game plan and setting yourself up for success, right? If you have a proper plan and you know how to kind of deal with each situation, you don't have to think about it very much, and you're going to make the right decision. So in the case of this game, my opponent attacks me with an Oracle. In my own mind, my game plan is that I need to land my Widow Mines and do a little bit of damage back to him. And at the same time, because he's gone Stargate tech, I know the rest of his tech is going to be very, very delayed. So I'm going to be in a really good position to make an attack with basically just Marines, and I can probably do a whole bunch of damage when I do make my attack, and kind of take the lead in the game from that point forward. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about is having a plan. Now, to keep it fairly simple in terms of having a plan, all a plan is when you load up the game, you want to go for a specific unit composition, and you want to get your buildings in a specific order. Now, all this can be accomplished very, very easily by simply using your gas in different ways. One of the best examples of this is if you want to have a little bit more of a meaty army at the start of the game. So if you're facing off against a Protoss, or you're really struggling against kind of early Zerg play, then you want a beefier army at the start of the game. That's the situation where you would kind of grab your barracks and start stim and start combat shield before you start moving up to your factory and your starport. That will allow you to have a much beefier army at the start. Even though it slows down your tech a little bit, you still end up in exactly the same place. You'll end up with a very similar timing attack with some advantages and some disadvantages. But all you really want to do when you start up a game is have a plan for what you're looking to do. Are you looking to tech quickly? Are you looking to get your upgrades fast? Are you looking to have a big beefy army in kind of the early game so that you can kind of hold off any major attacks that come? What are you looking to do? So for what I'm going to show you here is a very simple way to kind of play safe. For this particular game, all our plan here is we want to have a beefier army at the start of the game, so this is how we're going to execute. If you want to execute a more tech-driven play, that's where you take a look at episode number 3, where we talk mainly about building groups. That is a much faster tech up that will allow you to really get into drops and stuff like that a little bit early. But for this one, I want to pull back a little bit, simplify things a little bit, and just talk about how we can kind of have that nice big beefy army that's really going to help us out in the early game, and it should give us a pretty good timing attack. Now, the big thing about having a plan is it allows us to play safe. This particular plan really focuses around playing safe, so we don't have to worry about a huge amount of things that our opponent can throw at us. we're still going to be okay. One of the biggest advantages to having a plan like this is we kind of put ourselves at ease, we can play relaxed, we can just go ahead and do out our build order and not really worry about a whole bunch of different things that our opponent can throw at us. Not a lot of it is going to be very scary, right? And kind of the big advantage you gain with a plan is you know what you're supposed to be doing at any given stage of the game, and it allows you to identify maybe weaknesses in your overall build order, maybe in your overall game, much faster than if you're just trying to play willy-nilly and build structures at random and all that kind of stuff. It's really important to have a plan. If you have a plan and you know exactly what you're going for, and you take a huge amount of damage and harass, maybe even lose your natural, whatever it is, having a plan is going to let you get back to your basic build order, the basic things that you want to have out of your build much faster than if you're completely confused and you're not totally sure and you're just kind of doing things at random. Plans are really important in the game of StarCraft 2, especially for Terran, but they do apply to all the different races. It's a really easy way to make sure that you kind of build the right things at the right time. You stop taxing your brain in terms of thinking about what you should be doing, because you're just going for certain structure, certain layout, and certain units. Now again, as always, I'm not trying to teach you a specific build order. All I'm trying to do is show you how to implement builds at a very low level. So what I mean by that is, if you see a build that you really like when you're watching somebody stream, if you're following this guide, you should have a pretty good idea on how you can kind of steal that build and implement it into your own game with really only a few games practice. When we take a look at kind of low-level builds, all you're looking for is kind of when they take the gas and the order they put their structures up. As soon as you figure out those two things, you should be able to replicate a build, even if it's something crazy that a professional does, very quickly, very easily. And then you'll be able to kind of figure out your own ideas from there about different reads you might make in different situations. Obviously that gets to be a little bit more of a high level thing, but at the same time all we want to do is talk about how we can kind of just quickly figure out a build and execute it very fast. The last thing is learning how to implement ideas. So the basic idea for what I'm going to show you here is that you get a lot of units really early. You stay a little bit low on tech, and then you make a fairly strong attack on your opponent, hopefully killing them off. Now, because we're still very early in the series, we haven't really talked about things like third bases and upgrades and when we should be grabbing all of that, because that tends to complicate things quite a bit and make things a lot more challenging in terms of how you're able to hold off different things, how you're able to attack and stuff like that. So all we want to do right now is just learn how to kind of implement ideas. So the basic idea here is we want to play very safe. We want to have a very nice looking army, and we want to make sure we put a good timing attack on our opponent, so that they're in a little bit of trouble and we can hopefully win the game off that. Alright, so we're in the game here, and all we're looking to do is kind of a little bit more traditional build. We will be we'll be going for gas on 15 this time, but we're going to try to use that reactor to our advantage to get a nice big army. I'm just going to show you how you can quickly adapt everything. So for this particular game, it is a game against a custom opponent, or AI. I've set the computer to elite difficulty, which I've never played against, so I have no idea how good they are, but I've set them to elite because I do want to show you the attack part of this build. Because all we're going to try to do is, once we get Stim, Combat Shield, 4 medevacs, then we're going to look to make an attack. 4 medevacs will give us a good amount of healing, and our army size should be nice and beefy with Stim and Combat Shield to kind of handle a good solid attack. Again, we're not too worried about scouting just yet, because we don't know what we're looking for. We haven't really been over that yet, so there's no point in using our APM on scouting yet if we're not quite sure what we should be looking for from our opponent, and how we can identify certain builds and certain timings that they can do to us. So again, just building things up. I got my barracks up, I got my supply depot up, and I'm going to be looking to take my gas. I want to take my gas kind of just before 15 if I can. I find that kind of gives me the perfect time on it. So again, these are all things that you'll experiment with it and figure out on your own over time. But so everything's looking nice and clean. Pull this guy back to mine. Barracks is just about finished here, which is excellent. And we're going to send these guys off to work in the gas. So you can just send them off one at a time on your own. We'll send our Marine out front here. Get our orbital lit. And now we're going to be looking to send one of these guys down to make our new command center. So we're sending them about 315. Typically you send it when you're just about to get enough money or enough resources. You're going to see this is going to go down at about 325. Just very consistent using my money to essentially handle it. There we go. Slap down the reactor. And I'm going to need to make a supply depot very, very quickly. So this is where things get a little bit rocky, but we're still okay. So normally if we were playing a little bit higher level opponent, that wouldn't be a very safe play. We would have to make sure we scout it out to figure out if that was going to work or not, and be a viable way to play. But for right now it is, because we're assuming our opponent's not quite good enough to do a ton of damage to us. Now we got our supply depot finishing up. We're right on time with our reactor, which is perfect. And we only need to stick with the one guy in gas because we don't need that much gas just yet. What we do need to do is start adding on our barracks as we kind of get the money for it. So you can add on barracks when you have 150 minerals and your command center is still in the yellow. Once it hits green, you're going to have to start saving up for your orbital. There we go. Alright. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to look to transfer because that's finished. And we'll send a few guys down there. Get these guys in the bunker. You can see our orbitals on the way. Get our SCV working again because I'm missing that, which is not good. But you can see we're starting to bank up a little bit of gas. We're going to be able to spend that gas very, very quickly though. So we're just going to look to quickly add on tech labs to both of our barracks, and we're going to use this reactor barracks essentially to have quite a few Marines early on. It's kind of the purpose and the goal there. So both of those guys are added on. SCV's count is coming up good. Now against Protoss you would want to start making Marauders. Against Terran you want to stick on Marine. And against Zerg you want to mix in a few Marauders too. The only time you need to get Marauders against Terran is if they get Siege Tanks. Otherwise you want to avoid making Marauders. So now we're going to need to start getting depots. And now would be a really good time to start a factory. So as we start our factory, that's when we take our next gas. And you can see I've got stim and combat shields already on the way. So both of those upgrades are going to finish very, very quickly, which is what I'm looking for. So, get another supply depot straight away, and we're going to get another guy to work on depots. It's because the structure we have is going to require quite a few supply depots. You can see we've already gone from a relatively unsafe build to a build that has a whole bunch of stuff. It would be quite capable of holding off many different attacks. Yes, it's just Marines, but depending on what the other race is, it could be Marauders as well, very, very easily. Okay, so now we've got the factory done. We'll just get our starport going up. Starport's going up at about 750, which is going to be more than enough time to get the medevacs that we need. Now, as the starport starts, this is when we need to take our third gas. Otherwise, we're going to start to run out of gas. So again, just real simple. As you put the factory up, take your second gas. As you put your starport up, take your third gas. And that'll give you a nice mix of minerals and gas for your economy. Very, very simple and straightforward way to play. Okay, now these structures are finished. We'll just switch them over. And we're going to look to add on more barracks. So we can just go ahead and land that. Supply is quite high right now, so we can just add 2 barracks. And we're going to be pretty safe doing that. As you can see, medevacs are on the way. So you don't want a Marauder, want a Marine. Marines are going to give us a lower supply, but our damage is going to be higher. And as you can see, we've got a little bit of extra money that we can start putting towards whatever we want, really. But we'll just add more depots. And if I had been making Marauders, I'd be much, much closer to the 100 supply I'd be looking for, right? But we're at 94, and fortunately hitting a bit of a block because those depots are late, but that's okay. Start our next two depots. You can see we've got a good looking army. Those depots are now finished, which is excellent. And in 10 minutes, 98 food. It's not too bad. Take away the supply block, I would actually have more. So, these barracks can go, in this case I'm making them reactors, but they can go to whatever you want. Alright, so, perfect. We've got a nice looking army. We've got ourselves 4 medevacs, we've got stim and combat shields. We've got a bunch of extra money again, so we're just going to make barracks out of this. That's going to put us all the way up to 9 barracks. Different cases you'd be looking to take either expansions or whatever. But looks like our opponent's Zerg, so that's fine. Okay. You can see supply and everything is just skyrocketing. Upgrades are low, but that is what it is. And you can see, okay, so this opponent is going for infestors. So I'm not stimming because I want to try to keep everything alive. Not really focus firing or doing any of that stuff. But you can see, even taking some damage, I still have quite a big army. Continuing to make SCVs. Gotta make sure I add all this stuff. There we go. And again, we're just gonna start adding reactors. And we need more tech labs because we need marauders, because our opponent is a Zerg. So now I can start using stim because there's no infestors around. And again, just keeping my money low. And just rallying everything in. And you can see I'm going to get a pretty easy win without doing any kind of micro or anything like that. You can see how high my food is despite losing a whole bunch of stuff in the attack. Adding on a third or upgrades to this style of build, very, very simple. Hopefully they will GG out soon, because I'm pretty sure the computer is dead here. I don't think they can come back. But this is the elite AI or whatever. So I was hoping they'd put up a little bit of resistance, but whatever. Guess they don't. And in this case, because I'm so high on supply, I'm going to use the supply drop to fix that particular block. But you can see, like, just how quickly I'm getting close to supply capped, right? Even with the engagement and all that, it would have been about 13.5 minutes to supply cap, which is pretty fast. Now, obviously, that's going to slow down as you take a third base and that kind of stuff, but very, very easy to do. And this build's a lot more safe because you have more units at the start. You can kind of mix in marauders depending on what you're facing and if you would need them. Against certain Protoss, I'd rather have more marauders. Against Terran, you don't need them at all. So we'll just stem up to kill this guy off faster. Hopefully get him out of the game. There we go. The computer GG'd. Hopefully that was a very simple kind of demonstration. As you can see, I'm 200 supply. Yeah, my upgrades aren't very good, but it's still a very difficult attack for a lot of different players to stop. Alright, so with that in mind, let's take a look at the benchmarks that we want to do. Now, I'm not going to babysit you all the way through this entire build, and I hesitate to call it a build because that's very, very loose. It's important that you're able to kind of get everything down and continually produce and not get supply blocked if you want to be able to hit these benchmarks. If you're putting buildings down late, you're going to find it very challenging to hit these benchmarks. But if you're putting them all down very, very cleanly, you're getting your reactors and your tech labs at the right time. Everything's going to piece together, and it's going to feel very, very natural, and there's going to be a really good flow. The only exception with this type of build is your gas is going to build up a little bit, but that's quickly going to get spent out on stim, combat shield, in your factory. So don't worry if your gas starts to spike up a little bit early on. That's what you're actually looking to do. So with that in mind, again, at 15 supply, we're taking our first gas, and we're going to look to add a reactor to our barracks once we have our command center and our natural started, and a supply depot started. The little unsupply block is. So, with that in mind, let's dive right into it. At 3:15, we're going to start our command center and our natural. As we build up to 150 minerals, and we're not skipping supply depots, we're not skipping marines, that's when we start to add our extra 2 barracks. So you're just going to add those extra 2 barracks. It's going to look nice and clean. Once those 2 barracks finish, you put a tech lab on each one. And in terms of choosing to build a Marine or a Marauder out of it, if you're facing off against the Terran, you probably just want to stick with Marines. Marauders are still good, but they definitely lose out in a Marine versus Marine fight. So with that being said, at 6:10 we want to have Stimpack started. That's going to be right as soon as our first tech lab finishes. At 6:25 is when we want to start Combat Shield. That's going to be when our second tech lab finishes. At 6:45, that's when we want to start up our factory. And as soon as we start that factory, that's when we take our second gas. At 7:50, that's when we're going to start our starport. That's when you take your third gas. Again, it's all very natural, and you just link the 2 buildings together so that by memory, as soon as you start that starport, you're going to know, okay, I have to take my third gas. As soon as you start that factory, you're going to go, okay, I have to take that second gas. And then your gas is just going to lead into the rest of your build, right? And what's going to end up happening is at 10 minutes, we're going to have 50 SCVs, we're going to have 100 food, we're going to have 2 medevacs with 2 more being built, we're going to have stim and combat shields finished and ready to go. Now, one thing you're going to notice is you're going to start to build up quite a few extra minerals. And what you want to do with those for now is just add extra barracks so you have extra production. You can go all the way up to 9 barracks if you really, really want to. And you're not necessarily going to be able to spend all the money out of them, but as we start to talk about things like taking a third base and getting upgrades down the road, that's when we'll start to peel out those extra minerals and get them out of the build. But for now, don't worry about them. Just add extra barracks, get extra production going, and you're going to be in really good shape. Now, what you want to do in a real game here is once you get up to 4 medevacs, that's when you're going to look to attack, because when you have 4 medevacs, you're going to be able to pick up and leave if you have to. At the same time, you're going to have lots of healing so that if you need to stim and attack, you're going to be in really, really good shape. This particular style of build should be perfectly fine all the way through Platinum. If you're a Diamond player, hopefully you're capable of kind of figuring things out on your own a little bit and adding in things like upgrades and a third base and stuff like that. But for now, this is what you want to stick with. This is going to give you a really, really good, strong foundation. Make you safe against all sorts of different attacks the players are going to throw at you. Give you a nice, big, beefy army that's going to let you win a whole bunch of games. Alright guys, so what I really wanted to do with this is just show how flexible the different gas timings are, and how you can kind of completely tailor your build style to kind of what you need. In this particular situation, I felt that the other builds were getting to starport just a little bit too fast and it was a little bit too greedy. It was a really good setup to get a whole bunch of upgrades and stuff like that, but that's not quite what we need just yet. So I wanted to pull the series down a little bit and pull it a little bit more back to basics so we can start talking about linking different buildings so you're able to link when you build things together, and getting a really tight, clean way of producing a lot of stuff that's going to really, really push our game forward. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Hopefully it was pulled back just enough, and hopefully it'll help some people out that are struggling with different things. Anyway guys, this is Filter StarCraft. I will see you guys next time, and have a good one, man.